He implanted goat glands into desperate men. He told them it would bring back their youth, cure their impotence, fix 27 different ailments. He charged $750 a time, and the customers lined up more than 100 a week. The man holding the knife had never trained at a real medical school. He had bought his diploma from a mill for about $100. That should be the whole story. A quack in a small Kansas town, cutting men open for cash. But that is where this one only starts. Because from that clinic, John Romulus Brinkley built one of the most powerful radio stations in America. He turned the airwaves into a sales machine, diagnosing strangers he had never met from letters read out loud on the air. He nearly got himself elected governor of Kansas as a write-in candidate. And when the United States government finally took his license away, he crossed into Mexico, built a transmitter he claimed could be heard across the whole continent, and kept selling. This is the story of how a fake doctor with a pair of goat glands and a microphone almost took over a state, and how the numbers in the end came for him. John Romulus Brinkley was born on the 8th of July, 1885, in Beta, North Carolina, in the mountains of Jackson County. His father was a country doctor. Both his parents were dead by the time he was 10, and an aunt raised him. He wanted the title of doctor. He did not want the 10 years of study that were supposed to come with it. So between 1907 and 1915, he passed through a string of what were then called diploma mills, places that sold medical certificates. He enrolled at the Bennett Medical College of Chicago, and when he could not pay the tuition, he simply bought a certificate from the eclectic Medical University of Kansas City instead. The price was around $100. That paper was enough to work with. The eclectic diploma let him practice in 8 states. He sat the exam of the Arkansas Medical Board, and through a reciprocity agreement between states, he was granted a license in Kansas. So think about where this begins. Not with a brilliant surgeon who lost his way, with a man who skipped the medicine entirely and bought the word doctor for the price of a used suit. Years later, the newspapers caught up. The St. Louis Star exposed the medical diploma mills in 1923, and the Kansas City Journal-Post followed in 1924. But by then, Brinkley was already famous. And he was famous because of a goat. Brinkley settled in Milford, Kansas, a tiny town, in 1916. And there, around 1917 or 1918, he started performing the operation that made his name. The idea was as crude as it sounds. He would cut open a man and implant tissue from a goat's testicles. Xenotransplantation, he called it later, when he wanted it to sound scientific. He sold it as a cure for impotence, for weak manhood, for the fear every aging man carries that the best of him is behind him. Later, he stretched the claims further until he was promising it could treat 27 separate conditions, everything from dementia to emphysema to simple gas. The price was $750. In the 1920s, that was a fortune, more than many men earned in half a year. And still they came. By one account, over 100 customers a week. By his own telling, one early patient's son was born after the procedure, and Brinkley promoted the child as the first goat gland baby. It made a wonderful advertisement. Here is what the advertisement left out. The operation was medically worthless. Goat tissue does nothing for a human body except trigger it to fight back. Men left Milford with infections. Some of them died. Those quiet, buried outcomes would come back as a mounting pile of malpractice and wrongful death suits years down the line. For now, the money was too good, and Brinkley needed a way to reach more of the desperate. He found it in a brand new machine. In September 1923, Brinkley put a radio station on the air in Milford. The call sign was KFKB. He liked to say it stood for Kansas First, Kansas Best. He gave it a slogan that people across the middle of the country would come to know by heart: the Sunshine Station in the heart of the nation. It became one of the most listened to stations in America. In a national survey run around 1929, Radio Digest named KFKB the most popular station in the whole United States. And the reason was a segment Brinkley ran 3 times a day called The Medical Question Box. Here is how it worked. Listeners wrote in with their aches and their symptoms. Brinkley read the letters out on the air in that warm, fatherly voice and diagnosed people he had never seen from nothing but the words on the page. Then he prescribed, not by name but by number. Take prescription number 61. Take number 50. And a network of drugstores that had signed up with him and paid him a cut stood ready to fill exactly those numbered remedies. It was genius in its cold way. He was writing prescriptions for tens of thousands of strangers at once from a studio and taking a commission on every bottle sold. The doctor never had to look at a patient. The patient never got to be examined. And that gap between a man reading letters on the radio and the sick people trusting him was about to become a landmark in American law. By 1930, the authorities had seen enough, and they came at him from 2 directions at once. First, the doctors. Morris Fishbein, the editor of the Journal of the American Medical Association, had been chasing Brinkley in print for years, holding him up as the model of a modern medical fraud. That same year, the Kansas Medical Board revoked Brinkley's license to practice medicine in the state. Their language was not gentle. They found he had run, in their words, an organized charlatanism quite beyond the invention of the humble mountebank. Then the airwaves. The Federal Radio Commission refused to renew KFKB's broadcasting license. Brinkley took the government to court, and on the 2nd of February 1931, the Court of Appeals in Washington backed the commission. That ruling mattered far beyond one quack in Kansas. The court said the commission was allowed to judge what a station had already broadcast, measured against a single standard written into the law: public interest, convenience, or necessity. For the first time, the United States pulled a station off the air because of what it had been saying, and the court was blunt about why. Prescribing treatment for a patient a doctor has never seen from symptoms in a letter was, in the court's words, inimical to the public health and safety, and for that reason not in the public interest. 2 licenses gone in a single year. His medicine and his microphone. Any ordinary man would have been finished. Brinkley decided to run for governor. He announced his campaign for governor of Kansas in 1930, and he ran the whole thing on the radio he had left, the way he had sold everything else. Friend of the common man, enemy of the medical establishment that had just stripped his license. There was one enormous problem. He entered too late to get on the ballot. He had to run as a write-in, which meant every single supporter had to spell his name by hand on the paper correctly, or the vote would not count. And then it got worse for him. 3 days before the election, the Kansas Attorney General announced strict new rules. A write-in would only count if it read exactly J.R. Brinkley. Anything else thrown out? When the votes were counted, Brinkley had 183,278 of them. Almost 30% of the whole state for a man whose name you had to write in by hand. He came third, but look at how close third was to first. The winner, Harry Woodring, took 217,171 votes. Second place, Frank Hauke, took 216,920. Woodring beat Hauke by 251 votes. 251 in an election of more than 600,000. And Brinkley's discarded ballots? The Des Moines Register estimated that somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000 of his votes were thrown out over spelling. Woodring himself admitted later that with those votes counted, Brinkley would have won. A fake doctor, banned from medicine and banned from the air, came within a rounding error of governing Kansas. He ran again in 1932, on the ballot this time, and pulled 244,000 votes. He ran again in 1934. He never got in, but he had proved something dangerous. The machine still worked. All he needed was a bigger microphone. If the United States would not let him broadcast, he would go where America could not reach him. He moved his operation to Del Rio, Texas, right on the border. But the transmitter itself he built across the river in Mexico at Villa Acuna. On Mexican soil, the Federal Radio Commission had no power over him at all. The new station went on the air in August 1932 under the call sign XER and later Ziraye. He gave this one its own slogan to fit the geography, the Sunshine Station between the nations. And this time he wanted power, raw broadcasting power. He started with a transmitter of 50,000 watts and kept pushing through later builds that reached toward 500,000 watts. Brinkley himself advertised far more than that. He claimed 1,000,000 watts. He called it the most powerful radio station on the planet, powerful enough to be heard clear across the continent, into cars and living rooms hundreds of miles away in the dead of night. The programming was a strange carnival, country music, including the Carter family, fire and brimstone preachers, fortune tellers, advertising for anything that paid, and running through all of it, still, Brinkley's own cures. He was selling remedies to a whole new audience now, sometimes little more than colored water, 6 bottles for $100. He was richer than he had ever been. In Del Rio, he built himself a mansion on 16 acres with a greenhouse, a garden of 8,000 plants, and a fleet of Cadillacs in the drive. By one estimate from the Texas State Historical Association, he pulled in around $12 million in the years between 1933 and 1938, from a $100 diploma to $12 million. He must have thought he was untouchable. He was wrong, and the man who would prove it was the same doctor who had been chasing him for a decade. In 1938, Morris Fishbein published a 2-part series called Modern Medical Charlatans. He took Brinkley apart: the fake diploma, the worthless operation, the sick and dying patients. It was all there in print under the authority of American medicine. Brinkley made the mistake that finished him. He sued Fishbein for libel for $250,000, claiming his good name had been destroyed. The trial opened in Texas in March 1939. To win, Brinkley had to convince a jury that he was not a fraud. Instead, the trial became a public autopsy of his entire career, with his own record read back to him in court. And the jury delivered the sentence that hangs over this whole story. Brinkley should be considered a charlatan and a quack in the ordinary, well-understood meaning of those words. He had gone to court to defend his name, and a jury had branded it into the record forever. He did not just lose the case. He handed his enemies a verdict, because that ruling was a starting gun. The old buried outcomes of all those operations came back at once. A wave of malpractice and wrongful death suits landed on him, by some estimates well over $3 million in total value. The man who had charged $750 a body was now being billed for the bodies. After the verdict, the whole structure came down, and it came down fast. The lawsuits alone would have buried him. But the ground was giving way underneath the empire, too. Mexico had never been a permanent refuge. As governments on both sides of the border negotiated who got which frequencies, the big Mexican transmitter was shut down at the end of 1939 and formally seized by the Mexican government in 1941. The million-watt voice went silent. The money followed the microphone. Buried under claims he could never pay, John Brinkley declared bankruptcy in 1941. And there was more closing in. In his final years, he was under federal investigation for mail fraud, the crime of running his scheme through the postal system. His body gave out along with everything else. He suffered 3 heart attacks. Doctors, real ones this time, amputated one of his legs. And on the 26th of May, 1942, in San Antonio, Texas, John Romulus Brinkley died of heart failure. He was 56 years old, broke, disgraced, and under investigation. The goat gland doctor was gone. What is remarkable is how much of what he built outlived him. So what was the real con here? Not the goat glands. The goat glands were the freak show sign out front, the thing that pulled the crowd in. The con was everything behind them. He worked out, before almost anyone else, that if you owned the loudest voice in the country, you could sell people their own hope back to them at a markup. He never had to be right. He only had to be trusted 3 times a day by tens of thousands of people who had nowhere else to turn. Look at what he left in the record. 183,000 votes for a banned quack running as a write-in, and a governor's race decided by 251. A legal standard, public interest, convenience, or necessity that grew out of shutting him down and still shapes what American broadcasters can and cannot do. A jury verdict in his own libel suit, calling him a charlatan and a quack in plain English. He is what happens when a salesman gets hold of a new medium before anyone has written the rules. And the men who came for him, Fishbein, the medical board, the radio commission, the courts, they were not fighting a doctor. They were fighting the numbers he had built. In the end, the numbers won. 100 more customers a week, $12 million, 251 votes, over 3 million in claims. Add it all up, and it comes out to one bankrupt man in a San Antonio bed with a bought diploma and a dead station. The file on John Romulus Brinkley of Beta, North Carolina. Fake doctor, radio king, very nearly governor of Kansas. Case closed.